We're here today. We made it after an incredible storm last week. In my research and planning for today, I've consulted a number of websites, ibtimes.com, thewhitegoddess.co.uk, thehuffingtonpost.com. When I was first offered to do today's sermon, I was honored. My hubris said, "No worries, I know that subject like the back of my hand." Well, I've learned so much, it would take 10 services to share all of it. Imbolc, many ways to say it. I say it differently probably every time I say it. The old Celtic name is also known as Candlemas in more recent time, or Breed's Day, spelt Bridget, but in the Celtic pronounced Breed. It is one of the 4 Celtic fire festivals, which commemorates the changing of the threefold goddess from crone to maiden. The threefold goddess refers to maiden, the white, mother, the red, black, the crone, or rebirth, birth, and death, and their ever-continuing cycle, circle, and spiral. The word comes from Old Celtic, or Gaelic, from Imbolc, which means ewes or sheep's milk. This is the time when the ewes start lactating to feed the baby lambs, representing one of the first signs of spring. This is the seasonal change where first signs of spring and the return of the sun are noted. The first sprouting of the leaves, the sprouting of the crocus flowers. It is the festival commemorating the successful passing of winter and the beginning of the agricultural year. It is the day that we honor the rebirth of the sun and that we may visualize a baby, the baby sun, nursing from the goddess's breast. It is this day of celebrating the Celtic goddess Breed, later canonized in the Catholic tradition. Breed is the goddess of poetry, healing, smithcraft, fertility, and midwifery. If you can make it with your hands, Breed rules it. She is a triple goddess, so we honor her in all of her aspects, maiden, mother, and crone. She represents regeneration, livestock, and light. This is the time for communing with her and tending the lighting of her sacred flame, generally represented by a white candle. At this time of year, Wiccans will light multiple candles, white for Breed, and for the god, usually yellow or red, to remind us of the passing of winter and the entrance into spring, the time of the sun. This is also a good time for initiations. The sun is already working to melt the snow. Imbolc, or February 2nd, marks the recovery of the goddess after giving birth to the god. The lengthening periods of light awaken her. The god is a young, lusty boy, but his power is felt in the longer days. The warmth fertilizes the earth, the goddess, and causes seeds to germinate and sprout, and so the earliest beginnings of spring occur. This is a Sabbat of purification after the shut-in life of winter, through the renewing power of the sun. It is also the festival of light and of fertility, once marked in Europe with huge blazes, torches and fires in every form. Fire here represents our own illumination and inspiration as much as light and warmth. Imbolc is also known as the Feast of Torches, Oimolc, Lupercalia, the Feast of Pan, Snowdrop Festival, the Feast of the Waxing Light, Breed's Day, and probably by many other names celebrated the world over, and certainly in days of yore by the Egyptians, Babylonians, and many other indigenous peoples. In the 1990s, I was privileged to celebrate the Esbats, or full moon ceremonies, at the Morristown Unitarian Fellowship with Barbara Walker. I'll read an excerpt on Candlemas from her Women's Encyclopedia of Myths and Secrets, published in 1983. It's a big book, probably good for curing ganglions. The print is small. Just felt she could say it better than I could. Because it fell 40 days after Christmas, Candlemas became the festival of the purification of the Virgin, according to the Judeo-Christian rule that women must be purified 40 days after childbirth. an event which the patriarchs claimed rendered a mother ritually unclean. The Old Testament of the Bible and Jewish law specifies 40 days of impurity following the birth of a son and 80 days following the birth of a daughter, since females were supposed to be twice as unclean as males. From Leviticus chapter 12, verses 2 to 5. The Christian God also considered new mothers unclean and would not allow a woman to enter a church until the proper time had elapsed after her delivery. Her ritual purification was known as churching. The Council of Trullis once tried to abolish the festival of Candlemas on the ground that in giving birth to Christ, the virgin suffered no pollution and therefore needed no purification. But Candlemas was not originally a Christian festival. To Roman pagans, it was the day honoring Juno Februata as the Virgin Mother of Mars. Like the Lupercalia 2 weeks later, the day commemorated the goddess who engendered the fever, Febris, of love. Christian authorities said the pagan people went about Rome with candles burning in worship of this woman Februa. Pope Sergius renamed the holy day to undo the foul use and custom and to turn it into God's worship and Our Lady's, so that now this feast is solemnly hallowed throughout all Christendom. Still, Candlemas was properly considered sacred to the women and to the goddess of love. Among Celtic pagans, it was the feast of Imbolc, which stood opposite the great festival of Lammas in the old sacred year. Omens were taken on Candlemas Day for the new growing season, especially its weather. Therefore, animals were said to come out of hibernation to provide helpful predictions for the end of winter, which is why it is now Groundhog's Day. An old rhyme said, "If Candlemas Day be fair and bright, winter will have another flight. If Candlemas Day be shower and rain, winter is gone and will not come again." We also know that the middle of February, Februa, celebrates the goddess of love. Thank you, Barbara. It is traditional upon Imbolc, at sunset or just after ritual, to light every lamp in the house, if only for a few minutes, or light candles in each room in honor of the sun's rebirth. Alternately, light a kerosene lamp with a red chimney and place this in a prominent part of the home or in a window. Perhaps, if snow lies on the ground outside, walk in it for a moment, recalling the warmth of summer. With your projective hand, trace an image of the sun in the snow. Foods appropriate to eat on this day include those from the dairy, since Imbolc marks the festival of calving. Sour cream dishes are fine. Spicy and full-bodied foods in honor of the sun are equally attuned. Curries and all dishes made with red peppers, onions, leeks, shallots, garlic, or chives are appropriate. Seeds, nuts, spiced wines, and dishes containing raisins, all foods symbolic of the sun, are also traditional. It is a time when we as individuals begin to make our own personal goals as well, and we talk about the seeds, both symbolic and literal, we tend to plant in the coming year. This comes from Bo Nelson, a Wiccan from Wisconsin, in describing how common topics of conversation in his community involve talking about summer vacations and plans for their gardens. He continues, "I think we naturally spend all winter looking forward and making plans for the spring and summer, but Imbolc is the time when we first begin to put those goals into motion. This is also a wonderful time of year for spring cleaning, ritual baths, decluttering to clear space, make room for the goddess to come in, and for new seeds, physical and intentional, to be planted to take root in the coming spring." And from the book Earth Clock. For today's date, January 31st. Winter is thought of as a pause, a time of retreat and of waiting. The seeds that fell last August are supposedly dormant, yet not altogether dormant. These too are acted upon by the season. Many seeds need this period of cold before they can sprout. Winter is also a time of growth, and a part of the entire complex process, but the changes occurring now are subtle and unseen. On chilly ground, under the snow perhaps, the seeds are alive and in the act of becoming. The thrust of cold and dark are as necessary to the scheme as light and warmth. In the rough circles of seed shapes, life is staked out. The property of life itself is claimed. Call your attention to the beautiful graphic that Linda Kay provided for the front of our order of service when I first told her my thoughts for today's talk. And it's absolutely perfect and appropriate. We would be, at this point, somewhere between the second and third bulbs. As the ground warms up to 40 degrees is when those roots start coming out. Thank you, Linda. This is absolutely perfect. So it was around this time in 1994 when we had a similar snowstorm to what we had last week. I couldn't open my door for a few days and actually had to keep a towel wrapped around my dog, Daisy Dog, as a diaper, as I couldn't let her out. A few days after the storm, as 2-foot-high ice dams were forming in the gutters, my window and door frames started leaking inside. Not good. My ex-husband and I were in the process of separating, and he had moved to Tucson to pursue his master's and then doctorate in history. I called him to get his input, not expecting him to come back to New Jersey, but I got his voicemail. "Hi, this is John in sunny Arizona. Please leave your message at the tone." Well, the message I left was, "John, I know how I'm going to get the ice dams out of the gutters. I'm going to burn the house down." Didn't he call me back lickety-split, saying, "That sounds a bit drastic to me." I said, "Well, desperate times call for desperate measures." I ended up calling our good friend Lou, who blessedly came over the next day, which was warm and sunny, which we often notice happens after a big snowstorm. We hauled out the ladders, hammers and chisels, climbed up, and started chipping away at the ice dams on the low roof of my split-level house at the time. At one point, while taking a moment to rest my arms, I realized it was Groundhog's Day, and I swear I could hear my tulips and daffodil bulbs start putting out their little roots into the soil as the sun shone down on us and the icicles were dripping, much as is depicted in this graphic that Linda provided us. This year, on January 4th, I was inspired to plant some seeds and flats to present to all of you today in honor of this celebration. I ordered a mini greenhouse, which arrived the next day. I set it up on the 6th and planted 48 basil and 8 dill seeds and put it on my sun porch. 10 days later, as the temperatures dropped, the green goddess, as I've been calling my wee greenhouse, asked me to move her inside, as the sub-freezing temperatures weren't doing her or the green kids any good, hoping that I would have sprouts for you today. It stands now in a sunny window in my living room. Well, no seeds were here this morning, yet. Some might consider this a failure. The spin I choose to put on it is that the failure would have been in not trying at all. I know they will sprout at some point. I also recognize that the seeds have their own inherent intelligence, and perhaps they know that this is not yet the time for them to grow. I might not have collected the seeds or stored them properly, any number of things, but I know that they will grow, and we'll have plenty for the garden. Rehearsing for these songs today, especially Something's Coming, required 10+ hours with the three of us together, and much time individually, especially by Chuck, thank you Eileen, to work out this lovely but very complicated song. We stretched and explored our growing edges beyond what any of us had ever tried, and the success is in that trying, even though I lost some of the keys of it. Thank you, Chuck, for your patience with me. He had me doing that one break over and over again on Friday, and I was hitting it, and I felt like it was a remake of the Phantom of the Opera. You will sing, Christine, you will sing. And I still messed it up, but the success is in the trying. Two of my great heroes have been Thomas Edison and Albert Einstein. Edison had over 1,000 patents attributed to him. There are probably twice that number of inventions that he made that never did get patented, but he never stopped trying and researching and exploring. Einstein spent decades on exploring and expanding some of his ideas. He never gave up. The success is in the trying. And this is from Donna Markova, I will not die an unlived life. As with any other great force of nature, There is both glory and danger in the stories we tell ourselves. Some are toxic and keep our problems festering. Others are tonic and bring us beyond the limitations of our previous history. To be in a life of our own definition, we must be able to discover which stories we are following and determine which ones help us grow the most interesting possibilities. And again, if I may ask you to get comfortable, I'd like to close with a spiritual mind treatment from Reverend Frankie Timmers from the Center for Spiritual Living in Morristown. She wrote this the 5th of January, and with her gracious permission, I offer it to you. At this coming spring, I step into a new way of seeing myself and therefore seeing the world. I am delighted. I get to choose. I am free to choose. I choose to see myself through the eyes of love. Love with a capital L. Divine love. Pure love. Unconditional love. Infinite love. My heart melts, and everything that does not serve love melts with it. I am made free now. My freedom does not depend on any condition, any past history, or any limiting story that I tell myself. I am made free by means of this divine love that is already in me. So I stop struggling and start surrendering. I surrender to divine love. I surrender to God's highest vision for me. I surrender to doing good works, great and small, and I rest. I rest in the arms of divine love until I feel restored, refreshed, and renewed. With profound gratitude for the divine love that sustains me always, I go about my day, living as love, spreading my unique brand of love far and wide. I know that it will always come back to me, multiplied abundantly, and so it is. Blessed be.